In 2023, I produced a report called Is Ireland Still Catholic?, where we looked at the decline of the faith here in Ireland and the challenges that face the Church. Well, after that, I received many emails and messages from people who said that I had possibly missed something, a quiet revival of the faith among young people in certain parts of the country. So, 3 years later, I've come back to Ireland to look again. Coming up, we examine some of the challenges made in our last documentary.
We're, in a sense, an old army.
And see how the Church is responding.
What will we free ourselves from to free ourselves for?
We go to Cork in the south to meet young people who are part of a quiet group that have restarted weekly adoration.
I think people are looking and searching for connection. They're looking to grow deeper with their faith.
Because you're called to more. There's something in us that I don't think we seek comfort.
And we hear about how ordinary lay Catholics are stepping forward to take on more duties in the parish.
At the beginning, you're nervous, you don't know how it'll be received, so it was really new for everybody.
We learn about the reality of just how few men are entering seminary, but see how strong the conviction is of those who are.
I knew the beauty of the faith, and I thought to myself, wouldn't it be lovely to bring this back?
Ireland's Catholics, signs of hope? In 2023, I stopped people on the streets of Dublin, the capital, and asked them, do they practice their faith?
I would consider myself a Catholic, but I don't practice it.
I feel like I find things more important in life.
Eve, did you grow up Catholic?
I did.
Do you practice religion today?
No.
Everyone said no, which might have given an impression of a total lack of faith among young people. However, this time I've travelled to the other side of Ireland and to the city of Galway. It's Wednesday night, and outside, the streets are full and the bars are busy. But inside Galway Cathedral, it's dark, with flickering candles and incense burning, as around 60 young people have gathered to sing, to pray, and sit in silence for Eucharistic adoration. This is the act of praying in front of the Blessed Sacrament, which Catholics believe is the body of Jesus Christ. And after adoration is over, the group gather in a room at the back of the cathedral. And in real Irish style, the tea and biscuits are in full supply. And it gives me an opportunity to talk to some of them.
When you listen to the news or you read the paper, you'd be led to believe that the Church, especially among young people, is dead in Ireland. What say you?
I don't think it's true. From my own experience, I think a lot of people are more open to faith than they would have been before. I think there's like a void in people's lives. And I'll often tell people I go to Mass or I pray or I'm a Christian, and they're like kind of astounded, but they're always interested. And I think everybody kind of tries to hide their interest in faith and in God and all that. They just don't have the place to share it, you know what I mean?
What's it like being a young Catholic in Ireland today?
It's wonderful. Have a little look around tonight. There's no one over the age of 35 here, and people are joyful and they are ready and willing to represent Christ,
You go around the country, you see the fire in like certain pockets more so than others, but that fire is there and it's being lit throughout the country, and I think it's a great time to be a Catholic.
In 2023, I stated the fact that according to the latest census figures, over 78% of the population still identify as Catholic, but according to a poll by the Irish bishops, only around 30% are practicing their faith and attending Mass. I spoke to Father Owen Gorman at the time about this.
So why do you think it is that 78% of the population here claim to be Catholic, but when it comes to practicing, they don't?
Why do they still identify as Catholic?
Yeah, I think the research in this indicates that Irish people are now identifying with or living Catholicism in a different way. I suppose the older generation would have looked at being a Catholic as a person who they would have went to Mass, they would have went to confession quite regularly, they would have been to the local parish novena, so it tended to be very focused on church rituals of prayer and of sacraments.
Baptism was the first thing that made me a Christian when I was born. But then I was brought up the Catholic religion and I went to school with nuns.
The new generation of Catholics don't necessarily identify with those rituals as strongly, but what they do identify with is living Catholicism in terms of social justice or social inclusion or just having a kind of a charity towards neighbour.
So the markers almost have changed?
Yes, they have, yeah.
As to what it means to be Catholic for some people in this country?
This generation tends to identify more with what we might call a horizontal kind of living of the faith. It's been good to other people. Older generations, more that vertical dimension, you know, it was the worship, it was the adoration.
For Jesus first.
While this is still true, there is anecdotal evidence from across Ireland that seems to suggest Gen Z, people in their teens and 20s, are starting to return to Christianity and to some degree the Catholic Church. For example, more Bibles were sold last year in Ireland than in any year since 2013. This year, almost 130 people are preparing in the Archdiocese of Dublin to be baptised at Easter. In Galway, over 800 young people attended church on Ash Wednesday, something that was even discussed on Reddit. And a new report published by the Irish Catholic Bishops' Conference showed an increase in young people practicing their faith in 2023 and 24.
The report, very interestingly, does point to some type of uptick, as they call it.
You happy? You're rolling?
To talk about this possible quiet revival, I sit down with Franciscan friars Brother Ronan Sharpley and Brother Jacopo Pozzerli. Brother Ronan is from County Leitrim and started to take his faith seriously in his teenage years.
I ended up having to move school when I was about 16, and when I went to the new school I took another look at my life. I wasn't happy.
And when you say you weren't happy, why were you not happy in life?
Well, I was following others really in school. I was trying to fit in, I suppose, looking for affirmation. I didn't have an anchor, but when faith came into it, it gave me direction. It gave me meaning and hope. And it also helped me decide what I was going to do with my life.
Ronan was studying engineering, but felt a call to serve others in a more profound way. He travelled to El Salvador to do missionary work with the church, and that's when he decided to become a friar.
And I thought to myself, I'm really excited about what I do, working with the poor, with the church, as my response to my faith, my Catholic faith. And that's what I wanted to keep doing.
Father Jacopo, you are from beautiful Italy.
Yes.
What part of Italy?
I'm from Verona.
nice.
City of love.
And your first love was for medicine?
Yes. I started attending medicine because I wanted to become a Christian doctor. I was inspired by my grandfather and other figures of doctors that I met throughout my life.
Similar to Brother Liam, Jacopo was passionate about his profession, and he could have helped people every single day, but too felt called to something deeper, and it was during a pilgrimage that he decided to enter religious life.
There is no better or less important thing. What is best for you is what God asks from you. And that was the solution to my dilemma. Okay, and if God asks me to become a friar, that's all right.
That's okay.
Yeah.
In the 50s and 60s, over 90% of the population of Ireland attended Mass weekly. But over the decades, as Ireland became more prosperous and modern, there seemed to be a rejection of old Ireland, of which the Church was such an integral part. But of course, the stories of abuse and cover-up by some members of the Church were hard even for the most faithful Catholics to understand.
A damning report on child abuse in the Dublin Archdiocese. Hundreds of victims.
This is no longer about the church mission.
In 2024, Archbishop of Dublin, Dermot Farrell, spoke to me about the need for accountability.
It is a wound in the church, and that wound will only be healed when we have full transparency, true accountability. That's the challenge for the church today, because until that happens...
And is the church ready for that challenge? Is it?
Yes. Yeah, we are. We have been always encouraging people to come forward at every opportunity, that people who have been abused come forward, and we try and have accountability and justice for them, because that's the only way we'll make a safer environment for our children.
Did you not think, I want to run a million miles from this? This is going to be terrible to be part of the church at this time.
Yes and no. A part of me was excited to realise that something is coming to an end and it will have to be purified. And I knew the beauty of the faith. I'd seen it in El Salvador, and I'd seen little pockets of it, what it can be like in Ireland. And I thought to myself, wouldn't it be lovely to bring this back?
There is an optimism in the church from those I meet that there are signs it is starting to come back. But to what extent? Well, down south in Cork, over 4,000 people took part in the annual Corpus Christi procession in 2025, again with many young people. And from interviewing Gen Z members of the church, while they are of course troubled by the abuse crisis of the past, for them it's a generation removed. It's something their parents' generation had to go through. And now, some want to see a more courageous church.
Growing up in a smaller county, like I'm from Monaghan, there's such a lack of community.
In my last documentary, I met two young Catholics walking by the canal in Dublin, Eva and Maria.
If the faith, let's say for you, has all these incredible things that you're talking about, and young people are smart, they're intelligent, why do you think so few are practicing their faith or going to Mass then in Ireland?
I think they're misinformed. I think our shepherds, our priests are not preaching the truth. They think they're giving people what they want by a watered down Mass or a shorter homily, but young people are craving the truth. They're craving a lot of it we're finding is they're craving tradition. They're craving what the church is.
It's interesting what Eva says here. She believes young people today are not looking for, as she calls it, a watered down Mass or shorter homily, that they're looking for something more challenging. That's something I hear multiple times travelling across Ireland and speaking to the young believers who practice today. It seems the ones who are coming to the faith now are all in. For example, in Cork City, in the Church of Saints Peter and Paul, they have restarted 24/7 Eucharistic adoration. Sheila Kelleher is the coordinator of the youth ministry with the Diocese of Cork and Ross.
People are looking for substance, and I know for me, I grew up in a rural parish in near West Cork. It's not quite West Cork, but so I grew up and we would have gone to Mass every Sunday. I became an altar server for my local parish, the first girl actually in my parish to altar serve, and I did that for a number of years. But I didn't really see many other young people around me. So I think, being given these opportunities, I suppose I came into my faith through altar serving, which then led a priest in my parish invited me to go to Lourdes as a young adult helper. And that really changed my life. I met my husband in Lourdes, and my faith just went deeper. I started working for the chaplaincy in UCC, and then that led to me working with the diocese as the youth ministry coordinator there for the last year.
Sheila tells me that the number of young people coming to their youth projects has tripled since 2023. PJ Cronin is another young Catholic who comes here for weekly adoration.
There seems to be more of an openness than I've seen in recent years, and a lot of young men especially returning to the faith, which has given me a lot of hope.
Why is it, do you think, that in particular young men are coming back to the faith?
Good question. I suppose the way society has gone, there's been a kind of, men have kind of reverted into themselves because masculinity has come in under attack. You know, there's this narrative that anything you do at all that's masculine is toxic masculinity. And men really have found nowhere to go with that. They look around and obviously I believe as a Catholic the truest answer of masculinity is Jesus Christ. And you know, when that's presented to you, I don't think that can help but to change you. And I've seen so many people brought into the faith just because of that, just looking for responsibility, looking for meaning. And I think there's something about that model that it's so attractive. And you know, even all the saints throughout history, and of course our Lord himself, you know, the servant leadership model of giving yourself for others, I think there's something about that just calls to young men when it is presented to them fully, because it's uncomfortable, but you know, there's something about that attracts people.
So they're attracted to the idea that the church is saying, look, this isn't going to be easy, and this isn't going to be comfortable, this will be a challenge.
Because you're called to more. There's something in us that I don't think we seek comfort. Like Pope Benedict, you know, he said, we're made for greatness, not comfort. And I think there's something about that, you know, the paradox of the cross, the most beautiful thing you could ever look at, but also terrifying. You know, something that is uncomfortable, but it will make you grow, make you better than what you are, then that calls to them.
Sunday morning Mass in Cork. The cathedral is busy, and those attending are mainly the older generation. However, you have some of the young people who are coming back. But what type of Catholic church are they coming back to? Well, in 2023, I spoke to Bishop Alphonsus Cullinan from Waterford and Lismore about what kind of church it was in the past.
It was a very devotional church. I wonder how deep it was theologically. Being a very clerical world, that holiness was associated with clerics and religious.
Was it too powerful?
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think it was, there was too much of an emphasis on, there was a bad clericalism.
Those days of the church yielding great power in Irish society are gone. But everyone I speak to in the church now seems to agree that having a more humble church, purified as we heard earlier, is better. This is something I asked Bishop Fintan Gavin about, how he sees the new church in Ireland.
I see a very vibrant, renewed church, a church much more of conviction, where people make a decision about being part of church.
When you say a church of conviction, what do you mean by that?
That, I suppose, if we look at the church in the past, that changed very quickly. It was very much, there was a culture there that supported it. People went, the expectation was people will be in church on a Sunday, people were part of it. I think today there's a very, very strong culture that doesn't support faith, so people have to make a decision around faith themselves. I think the church today is a much humbler church, and that we're leading from gospel values that are based on justice, peace, love, integrity.
A church that wants to rule not with power, but lead with the gospel message. And that not only applies to the church in Ireland, but goes all the way to the top. In 2026, history was made when Pope Leo met with Irish abuse survivor David Ryan from Tipperary. They met privately inside the Apostolic Palace at the Vatican for almost an hour, where the Pope heard his story and said sorry. I was there to meet David when he walked out.
His sincerity, his empathy, he felt my pain, but he hasn't experienced my pain, but he knows what pain I have gone through in my family. And just a lovely, lovely man, and what an experience to have. Wow. I'm so glad I've done it today. I really am so glad I've done it.
A moment of healing in what has been a painful story. But as Bishop Fintan Gavin said, the church in Ireland will be a smaller, renewed church. The problem is, smaller means fewer priests and less resources. And while many people in Ireland today don't practice their faith, as you heard earlier, they still identify as Catholic and expect to have the church there to use when they need it, at Christmas, for weddings, baptisms, and for funerals.
And that all takes a huge amount of resources and time, and it's a time of encounter. The difficulty sometimes is that there isn't a conviction outside of that, that there isn't this kind of, part of a religious community that gathers every Sunday for the Sunday Eucharist, if you like, that we're not making disciples. So and yet these are really important moments. It's important to use them as moments for evangelization, for connection, but they do take time and resources.
Time and resources that are now in short supply. And it's a problem right across Ireland. In Galway, I sat down with Bishop Michael Duignan, who told me the church needs to make some tough decisions.
We have to leave behind certain things that we can't bring with us. What will we free ourselves from to free ourselves for? What are we going to prioritize? Instead of continually doing the same thing over and over again, aimlessly, we are still using old structures. We have lots of buildings, lots of infrastructure that we no longer need and are becoming a burden upon us.
You mean like lots of parishes?
Lots of parishes, lots of buildings. We tend to keep the same thing going that we always did. Our schedules for masses, our parish schedules. I don't think that's going to last much longer. I think we're coming near maybe the end of that because it's become to a critical phase that we just can't keep things going the way they were.
Where do you think the church should be using now its limited resources and its personnel?
I think one of the problems in our modern world is we're time poor and we're so busy with so many things. So we need time to spend time with people. So I think we're going to have to make choices. Now I'm excited about these choices because I think they will bear fruit into the future.
What would something like that be?
Maybe I prioritize when I assign priests, that I don't assign priests to a parish to say a morning mass, but I assign them maybe to the university to accompany young people. So how do I free up a priest from the ministry of the weekend mass, weekend work, to go and to be with the young people at those gatherings?
That's difficult for you to have to make that decision, saying, well, we have one priest, he can't be in two places at once. Maybe of a Sunday, this parish cannot have a mass, but here in the university with the young people, they can have a mass. It's difficult, isn't it?
These are some of the difficult choices, and that's why certain discernment. Now, obviously, we wouldn't be talking about leaving people totally devoid of the sacraments or mass. We'd be doing our best, but we do have to make choices. And in those cases, I think the choice would be to accompany the youth of the church and to accompany the future generations of the church.
Jesus speaks of his thirst to the woman, asking her.
The lack of priests being at a critical point is something that some dioceses have been responding to in creative and bold ways. In County Mayo, for example, in the Diocese of Killala, they looked at some of the roles currently fulfilled by priests and thought, why don't we have lay members of the community helping with those? Father Michael Gilroy is the director of the Newman Institute in Ballina, and in 2023 they held an assembly with members of the diocese to see if people would be willing to step forward.
One of the strong desires expressed in the assembly and through the results was that people were more than willing to participate in the pastoral life of the diocese at parish level and at diocesan level. But the one thing that people asked for was formation and training.
From that, the Newman Institute developed a 2.5-year program called Certificate in Lay Leadership, Theology, Culture and Ministry. 12 modules over 2.5 years.
To all of you, our graduates, I salute each and every one of you here this evening.
64 people graduated from the first certificate program, more than they had expected. And one of the main ministries these lay leaders are now involved in is the funeral ministry. For example, being at the wake the night before a funeral to pray with the family, sometimes with the local priest present, but other times on their own.
We're planning for a situation in 5, 10, 15 years' time where we won't have a priestly presence in every parish, so we will depend on our lay leaders to celebrate the various rituals that are part of our funeral rites.
Evelyn Deasy.
One of those graduates is Evelyn Deasy.
You're very much working in collaboration with the priest that's with you. So you're co-leading the prayers. So you would be at the funeral home the evening before. And in some cases then the remains are brought to the church and prayers are said there. We would be part of that as well. The next day then we're at the funeral mass. We wear the alb on the altar with the priest, so we're very much part of the ceremony that's happening there.
What kind of reaction did you get from the people when they saw you coming in and reading the prayers?
They are happy. People will come up to you afterwards and thank you personally. They appreciate your presence.
Another one of the graduates is Marie Gilvari.
Marie Gilvari.
Who enrolled in the 2-year certificate programme after seeing it advertised online.
This got my attention because I saw it probably on social media, and maybe it's the Holy Spirit at work, I don't know, but I said yes.
Almost like the Holy Spirit calling you.
Maybe it's about, I know you talk about people getting a call and answering yes to it. And I suppose I actually think that that's what happened to me, and that's why I said yes.
These lay members were already involved in church ministries before, like the choir ministry and Eucharistic ministers, but felt they wanted to give back to the church and live out their baptismal promises even more. But still, they all admit at first they were apprehensive, like Anita Mulligan.
Didn't have the faith in myself. I said I can't be there. I can't give the support to families that that they might need in the time of grief. It is a very vulnerable time. And I just thought I didn't have the capability, but...
Was it a case as well that, you had always thought, well, we're this side of things in the church, and the priest and the religious and the ordained, well, they're the ones who take care of that. Was that part of it as well?
Yeah, that was kind of the daunting part of it, because I would have been on the gallery singing, looking down on the people, I would never have been to the front, facing them. And that was the kind of daunting thing. I said, I won't be able to, do the reading or, the prayers, but no.
You were reluctant initially. Are you glad now that you got involved?
It's great, actually. I'm so glad I did do it. Yeah, so glad I did do it.
Why do you say that?
It's very rewarding, actually. It's this spiritual feeling that you get off it. It's hard to actually, say what it is, but it's when you start them prayers and you're there, just something comes over you,
They're hoping that this greater lay involvement could be used as a model for other dioceses in Ireland. Bishop Francis Duffy is the Archbishop of Tuam and the newly appointed Bishop of Killala, and he was the one who approved this initiative.
Has there been any resistance to it?
Yes, there would be a small amount of resistance to it. I remember talking about this, these sort of initiatives maybe 10 years ago, and people were a bit, so no, we won't have that.
Yeah, they want to see the priest.
Yeah, they want to see the priest, but things have changed a lot since then, and I think there's a greater openness to that and a welcome for it as well.
But for them, has it been a case of maybe reality bites?
It is certainly reality biting, yeah, but I think there's also a welcome for more people being greater involved in their local church, so I think it's a good initiative.
As a young Catholic in Ireland today, Michael, how do you feel about the state of your faith, the Catholic Church in Ireland?
I am actually really hopeful. And I'm not just saying that, I am really hopeful, because I believe that we are few in number, like the Catholics, solidly in the faith, particularly young Catholics. And I think when you look, into stories from the Bible, you see how God uses just a remnant, a small number of people to actually spearhead this renewal of faith, or to convert a whole town or village, So he works from a few the whole time.
And Jesus says to him, your faith has saved you.
Three years ago, I came here and asked the question, is Ireland still Catholic? And as you've just seen, the answer is complicated. It's probably both yes and no. No, not in the way that it used to be, but yes, in a new way. Smaller, stronger communities of faith. Where do you see signs of hope today, Bishop, when you look around?
I see lots of signs of hope. I mean, the culture within which all of us live, but particularly our young people, is more and more challenging. What's my life for? How can I make a difference? I think that's what young people are searching for.
I think the church in Ireland in the future will be small, but we will be communities of faith because we choose to be communities of faith, not because it's what we're to do socially. Faith is something that liberates you. Faith is something that crowns everything you have. It brings a more to life. I am convinced that message is as valid today in Ireland as it ever was.